Okay, hello. Welcome to the live stream for February 14th, 2018. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Setting my timer here so we don't go too far over on time. Welcome, welcome. New Chris is here. Karen is here. We'll see who else is hopping on. How is everybody's Valentine's Day going? This is one of those days that's probably the number one hoovering day, maybe outside of Christmas or somebody's birthday, that narcissists and other types of emotional manipulators tend to surface. So Valentine's Day, I know, is a really difficult day. Plus, there's all those feelings of nostalgia and hope and, things that tend to come up for people. We were talking in the support group earlier today that Valentine's Day, I had posted a picture of Star Trek, Jean-Luc Picard, how he would always say, shields up, red, what would he say? Code red, like shields up, prepare yourselves like we're going in. And I think that's such a kind of very pertinent to Valentine's Day, that it's important that we have our shields up and that we're prepared for kind of going into this, because there are so many different things that can surface. Our own feelings, like I was saying, feelings of nostalgia and feelings of this kind of hope that maybe they could change. And especially if you're combining that with hoovering, which tends to be a whole mix of things, right? It be anywhere from, I'm sorry, this time is different. I've changed. I found God. I found rehab. I found a therapist. I see the error of my ways kind of stuff. That kind of stuff, the love bombing, the future faking, all the way to the threats of suicide, or just in a lot of, everything in between, the incessant texts, the phone calls, the badgering, the trying to just say everything that they think their target would want to hear, stuff that doesn't even make sense. I mean, they could be remarried, they could be dating somebody else, and then they're still texting you, wanting to talk about your relationship, or, it's just a bunch of nonsense is what it is all the time with these kinds of people. And but the other way that narcissists tend to operate during Valentine's Day, that somebody had mentioned in the group, which I thought was a very valid thing to bring up, was that they could oftentimes do the exact opposite. And they'll use Valentine's Day as an additional way to extract kind of maximum pain from their target, and start in with a lot of the devaluing, maybe breaking up with their target, breaking up with their target the night before, kind of insinuating that the target doesn't deserve gifts or love, withholding, attention, affection, these kinds of things, using Valentine's Day as yet another way to punish their target. So just prepare yourself emotionally, realize it's, none of this is real. Like this is the workings of a pathological person. It's not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of them. And to not take anything that they're saying as anything other than that. So when I say that it's not real, I mean, it's all about them, that they're projecting all their garbage onto you, all of the future faking and love bombing and all of that. It's just a tool in their toolkit to continue to manipulate. Don't fall for it. They haven't changed. Talk isn't just cheap, it's free. And words are narcissists' favorite tool in their toolkit. So it's really important to not fall into everything that you want to hear, and break the cycle. That honestly is the best Valentine's Day gift that you can give yourself, is to set yourself free and to realize that you do matter, that you are worthy, that you should never have to be in a situation where you have to earn being treated with dignity and respect. Those are very basic human values, human rights. New Chris says, my narc was really a sociopath. She showed a lot of awareness of her behavior and plenty of signs of hurting me just for the pleasure. Much better off without. Yes. And especially if you do have a sadistic person in your life who you start kind of getting that feeling of like, I think that they really do get off on causing me pain. And, again, and if you catch yourself kind of wondering, like, am I reading this situation clearly? Like, could this person actually be getting some sort of kick off of my pain? Odds are that you are reading that situation clearly, because think about it. Most of the time, you probably don't wonder that about other people in your life, right? It's probably just that one person. So, kind of using that as a gauge to, kind of a yardstick to measure that against. Because it's difficult when you're in a situation like this. It's really difficult for a normal, decent person to see in other people uh, the sadistic behavior, because it's just not something that's within kind of our realm of how we interact with the world. So yes, and musically says yes, they do enjoy causing pain. I really think that there's quite a few of them out there that do. With narcissism, it's all about those feelings of they need to feel they don't have a healthy ego. And so in order to build up that ego, they do it in ways that generally grind other people down. So it's sort of like the school bully, right? And they do that because it makes them feel superior, makes them feel smug and superior, like that they're now that they're okay with themselves because they've ground everybody else down. But of course, we all know like that's a very fleeting thing. It's sort of just kind of this hit of dopamine for them. Like it makes them feel good in the moment, but it's not sustainable. So they have to continue to grind people down. And there's a lot to it, but like, generally they'll have certain targets that they focus on grinding down. And I think generally too, the reason that they do pick certain targets, they tend to pick those closest to them. And they oftentimes tend to pick those that have traits um, within them that they don't like about themselves. So, for example, if a school bully, is most likely getting bullied at home, that kind of stuff tends to come from somewhere. So, if they're getting bullied by an older sibling or a parent, and they are not able really to stand up for themselves, they might kind of subconsciously really grow to hate that weakness within them. And so then what do? They go to school and they pick on another kid that they see weakness in. And narcissists, not really, I mean, oftentimes narcissists are just bullies that are over the age of 18. So, and same with sociopaths. So then it's that same kind of behavior that they're focusing on character traits of other people that they see within themselves that they have this intense loathing for, and then they just lash out at them. It's very sick, very twisted. Lots of people here tonight. Dinah says, I'm really concerned for a friend who's been waiting on a ring for 6 years. Her narcissist of a boyfriend doesn't seem very committed. If I didn't know them, I'd think that they weren't really a couple. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I see a lot of, I guess mainly more so with women that tend to kind of hang on to relationships thinking that someday, Valentine's Day, they're waiting for that proposal, birthdays, Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day, waiting for that ring. It just doesn't keep, it never ends up manifesting. And then there's sort of that feeling, I think, of being pot committed of, I've already dedicated 6 years of my life to this person. Surely they will come around, right? Surely they will see that I'm the person that they want to be with. And I think in those kinds of situations, it's really important for men or for women to know what your intentions are. Like, why are you dating? Are you dating to get married, or are you dating to be in a serious relationship, or are you just dating to date? And there's nothing wrong with any of those, but where it does become a problem is if we're dating to date, but then our partner is actually dating because they want to get married, because then we're just wasting their time. So it's important to get clear about people's intentions. And it's important to have a line in the sand so we don't let things go on if we want to date to get married where we're not spending 6 years with the person, that it's clear in our mind of, okay, 2 years, if I don't get a ring, you know, within like the next 6 months, if we're not having these conversations, like I need to just cut bait and drive on, because I'm just going to continue giving this person time. And if they don't know by now, then I'm not the one, because a person, you generally will know within a year or two of experiencing life with that person, if there's somebody you want to be with for the long haul. And let's see, before we get into this, I wanted to let you guys know I did a live stream with Angie Atkinson yesterday. I'm in the biggest time warp. It was yesterday. Wow. It feels like it was last week. So I did a live stream with her that you can find that video on my channel. It's also, I did it as a podcast as well. So you can find the audio of that on podcasts. If you are a podcast listener, my podcast is called Thrive After Abuse as well. And so I was chatting with Angie today about, just the live stream and all that. And so we are going to try doing something new. We're going to do a live stream every Tuesday, I think is the plan. So I think, what did we decide on? 1:30 Eastern Standard Time is when we're going to do it. Probably run for about an hour. And we're still trying to figure out logistics of it, as far as we're thinking of alternating it. So it'll be like on her channel one week, then my channel on another week, back and forth. And I don't know. I still need to figure out kind of the Zoom technology and if we can live stream on both, or I don't know. We'll figure it out. But that's in the works, and that will become a thing this coming Tuesday, which is very exciting. So look for that. And Stainless is saying, yes, when narcissists hurt people, they'll sometimes get what's called duper's delight. They'll actually smile or smirk. Yes, absolutely. And it's not even necessarily when they hurt somebody. It can be also when they get away with a lie. So, yeah, duper's delight. And it's that weird little kind of smug smirk that, and at the time it'll just kind of register like, what are these smirking at? It's almost like they have a joke to themselves is what it is. And I guess really that is what it is. That's why they are smirking. Okay. Katie says, you and Angie were great together. I used to watch her in the early phone days. She was talking about, oh, I love her. Yeah, she's great. She's really enjoyable. She's got good energy, high energy. It's fun. This is kind of a small, relatively small world, growing world. There's more and more YouTubers kind of talking about this topic every single day, it seems like, but it's still a relatively small kind of area. Our little corner of the internet is still relatively small. And so it's always nice to just kind of meet somebody who's interested in the same stuff, and it just seems to be kind of like a kindred spirit. So it'll be good. I think it'll be entertaining. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up. Okay, that's a great question. Jennifer asks, how can you tell the difference between a narcissist and a genuinely charming person online? Confidence versus arrogance. To me, well, charm by definition is something that's insincere. It's superficial and it's insincere. So I'm always on high alert when somebody comes across as charming. To me, there's a difference between being charming and being likable. So to me, charm is when somebody really lays it on thick. And I'm trying to think, more often than not, I guess because it's now on my radar, it tends to come across as insincere. Back in the day, it didn't so much. I guess it still did to some extent. It felt like they were laying it on too thick, and it definitely felt kind of like a soulmate type connection. So, I think the best way to tell is just to go super slow and remember that you set the pace. So, and this is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. I know I did too, is after they get out of an abusive relationship, they really they have trouble, they question themselves, they question their judgment. We don't trust ourselves. Like we feel, many of us have PTSD, and people tend to feel very broken, and often part times because they have trouble trusting other people. And especially when it comes to dating, and especially when it comes to meeting new people. And so there's that kind of a question, like what you're asking of, well, I met this really amazing person. They seem super charming, but how can I tell if it's love bombing versus how can I tell when it's real? And they might even get really upset with themselves and be like, man, I just feel so damaged. And I wish I could just trust again. I just have all these issues. And they're very quick to chalk it up to their PTSD. When in reality, how quickly we moved before and how quickly we were to take other people at face value and rush into things, let somebody else set the pace, especially if they were charming. That was a big part of the problem. And that's something that it's going to take practice, but it's something that we really have to learn how to slow down and set a healthier pace and not fall into all of that intensity. And it's freaking difficult because that intensity, it can feel really, really good. It can be so easy to get swept up in that and just be like, but oh man, they seem so amazing. And I just want to jump in both feet and, love like I've never loved again, kind of a thing. But it's important to kind of pull back a little bit, especially if you're like, boy, this person really, I seem to have a great connection with them, to just go slow, you know? And, um, and to realize, like, if things start to go south at any given time, like, you set the pace, like you can slow things down, you can leave, you can whatever. So um yeah, so I guess the point is, take the pressure off of yourself. Like, you don't have to tell right away. And frankly, what was that one book? I think it was The Boundaries After a Pathological Relationship, where she was talking about that. She's like, really nobody's a good judge of character. And I agree with that completely, especially when it comes to people that are charming. So it's a lot easier to be a good judge of character if a person's problematic. Like, that stuff you can tend to see right away, but it can be it's, a lot more advanced stuff to try to kind of sniff out whether or not this love bombing person is for real, or if it's all part of the emotional con game. So, but time will tell you everything that you need to know. It really, really will. Emotional manipulators tend to follow the path of least resistance. And if you don't get caught up in the whirlwind, they get irritated because they're not, more often than not, they're not good at playing the long game. So, they'll try to push you into playing their game. But if you continue to set the pace, they'll more often than not drive on. And if a person's really meant for you in your life, they'll respect your boundaries and they'll be okay with moving at a pace that you're okay with. So that's something else, because a lot of people, again, myself included, tend to struggle with, oh, but what if they're like this amazing person and I'm missing out on them because I feel like there's all these red flags and I don't want to move at the pace they're moving at. But what if I'm moving too slow? And so then therefore they want to move faster and then they leave. And my response to that would be, then let them leave, because obviously that shows their level of interest in you, right? If they're willing to not wait around and not move at a moderate pace. That's the key word, I think, with all of this is moderation, and repatterning our thinking to becoming more moderate, especially with how we perceive other people's behavior and like what's healthy. Because before, a lot of us were like, man, that love bombing, that level of intensity, it just it didn't seem problematic. It felt ideal. And that was the problem, because it is problematic. Like, healthy people don't move at that kind of pace, and healthy people don't get sucked in by that kind of stuff. And so it takes us a while to realize, oh, whoa, okay, I didn't realize that was a problem, that I was getting sucked into this. And especially if it's something that's continuing to repeat in your life. It's a sign that there's some unmet needs there. Generally, I think most of the time it tends to be loneliness or people feeling unloved or unimportant. So kind of those emotional needs not being met. And so then when somebody comes along and they shower you with all this attention and affection and all of that, a person who's starved out is going to jump at that. But it's a problem when somebody showers another person they don't know with attention and affection like that. And it's a problem that a person's jumping at it. So it's just something for us to examine. Why are we jumping at it? And how can we break that pattern? Okay. Let's see. Uh, Divatam Divatam says, okay, trying to figure out where I came in at. He was cheating on me with X, but he was with me. I was the main woman. Then I got discarded for her. So did she get discarded for me? Okay, I'm a little confused as to what's going on here. He was cheating on her. He was cheating on you with her, but he was with me. You were the main woman. Then he got I don't know. It's a bunch of cheating, and it sounds like probably a cycle of people getting discarded and cheated on and discarded and triangulated and all of that. So I think at the end of the day, like what matters is that you see his behavior for what it is and that you're able to break the cycle. I see a lot of people who kind of tend to get caught up with wanting to know. There's like this weird hierarchy of supply out there. Like, well, I was the primary and she was the secondary and this, that, and the other. And that's, if you guys are playing that game, it's a weird form of, I don't even know what that is. Like trying to, denial. I don't know. Because either way that you look at it is everybody in this situation is being used. So, it doesn't matter if a person's primary or secondary or whoever or whatever. It's a pipeline of people that are being used. Yes, Angelique is talking about, I think talking about the book club. Book says, Who's Pulling Your Strings by Harriet Breaker. Listen to the whole book on audio today. Very insightful. Highly recommend. Yes, I agree. I enjoyed that book as well. And I also listened to it on audio. I did that a few weeks ago. Maybe it was last week. I don't know, in this time warp. But my book club notes are up for that book. So if you want to go to my website, thriveafterabuse.com, book club notes, you'll see a link to that. So, and then we're going to have the book club discussion for that book the last Thursday of this month, which I believe is let me check here. It is the 22nd. So not tomorrow, but the Thursday after that. It's a great book, all about manipulation and how to break free from it. Okay, let's see. Lily asks, did you start the healing site? Are you asking about, I think you meant, are you referring to the healing group? If so, yes. I'm not quite sure what you're talking about, but we started a group on Facebook. I haven't done a whole lot in there yet, but it is up and going. There's a ton of information in there. I just need to kind of develop more of a game plan for it, but it's called 365 I Thrive. So 365 I Thrive. It's a closed group on Facebook, and it's all about us. It's all about healing and boundaries and standards and deal breakers and inner child stuff and just kind of where we are now. So the other group we have, the Thrive After Abuse, is very much people that tend to be fresh out. They're very focused on understanding all of this, understanding that they were in love with a pathological person. And the focus, because of that, tends to be very much so on the narcissist. And then this new group, the focus is for people that are further along in their healing and they're ready. They've gotten the clarity and the validation that they were seeking. And so now they're ready to really focus on themselves and repair. Even if a person had amazingly healthy boundaries and standards and deal breakers and stuff before, odds are all of that stuff is eroded in ways that you have not even begun to realize yet. So it's really worth, you just gotta revisit all of that stuff again to see what, kind of what needs work. So, and Karen and Healthy Love, we're saying that Karen says, I love the new group too. Well, good. I'm really glad. Erica, I don't know who that is. Erica says, can we talk about Jacob Copeland? His narcissistic mom embarrassed him on national television during a moment that was supposed to be positive. I resonated with his tears when his mom abandoned him. I am not familiar with that, so please elaborate. But kind of along the same lines, I will say I saw there was a trending video on Facebook, I don't know, a week or two ago. There was a guy who had a young little girl. She's probably 2, 3 tops. They were in the store and I don't know, probably wanted a toy. She was acting like a 2-year-old and he pulled her outside, which I'm all for that, right? Even if that's the line of like, hey, you know what, we're going into the store. We're not getting any toys. We're here to get cat food. And that's it. And if you have a 2-year-old that starts having a meltdown, I think that's a great approach to just pull them outside and say, okay, we're not doing this. But this guy was such a flippin' jerk and really, so he's videoing himself and it was supposed to be this video of him being a good parent. And so he was really talking about, this is what you do and you got to nip this stuff in the bud and like blah, blah, blah. And it was interesting reading the comments because here I am watching this thinking he's totally shaming this little girl. And even though she's only about 2 or 3, she totally feels humiliated right now. Like you could see it in her face. Like she was just so embarrassed and didn't even know how to react to it. And every time her eyes would start to water, well up with tears, he would start in on her again. And I just thought this guy is he's so full of himself and he's such a jerk for for causing emotional pain to his child and then spinning it around to make him seem like he's just this great father. And what really bothered me was all of the comments from people that were watching this that were like, yes, you preach it, you set her straight, you do this, good for you, blah, blah, blah. I was like, man, I tell you, it's the stuff that's out there, it's sad. Erica says, okay, Dana, Jacob is a high school tier 4 football player who was announcing which college he was going to play for. His mom was by his side while he chose from his top 3. She wanted him to choose Alabama. Interesting. Okay, and then I'm guessing she didn't take it well when he said that. Yeah, that kind of stuff really irks me too, because it's like, whose dream is it, right? Is it Jacob's dream or is it his mother's dream? And I think that's so disgusting when parents use their children to fulfill some weird fantasy of theirs. Like, that's not cool and it's not fair. You know, he is his own person. He has hopes and dreams and goals and wants and needs. And I hope he goes to the college that he wants to go to and doesn't let his mother dissuade him from doing otherwise. And I am, you see that kind of stuff and you're like, man, that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Whoa. Erica says, yeah, okay. Oh, she wanted him to go to Alabama. He chose Florida. She stormed off on live TV and left him there. The newscasters were asking him what happened, and he tried to keep his composure, broke down. Wow. What a jerk. Jacob's mother, if you're watching this, you're a jerk. So, yeah, that's outrageous. Jennifer asks, do most parental sexual abusers have narcissistic personality disorder? No. Well, I think probably yes and no. So kind of, by definition, a personality disorder is something that's pervasive and persistent. Pervasive and persistent problematic behavior that causes problems, major problems in a person's life, whether they realize it or not. And so then personality disorders are divided up by different characteristics, right? So narcissism is generally known as like a grandiosity, kind of, arrogance, lack of empathy, kind of this blinding degree of selfishness. It's all about them all of the time. Inability to empathize with other people's emotions because it's all about them. Antisocial personality disorder, that is more driven by dominance and deceit. So, but here's the thing. So like the core of antisocial personality disorder is narcissism. So it's still that blinding degree of selfishness of whatever they want. So with narcissists, it's more kind of in a very boiled down way. It's more of this, it's all about, for a narcissist, it's like, it's all about me all the time, right? That's kind of a narcissist. Sociopath, it's more of, it's all about them at the expense of others. So narcissists, it's all about them all the time. Sociopaths, it's all about them at the expense of others, kind of more along the lines of like that psychopathic bend. It's all about them at the destruction of others. And to me, it's shades of the same color. There's a lot of like overlapping there. And just because, a person hasn't shown traits of trying to destroy other people doesn't mean that they won't or that they can't. Like Scott Peterson, I think, is a great example of that. Somebody that really has kind of that narcissism of it's all about him all of the time. And, it very quickly escalated to him murdering his wife and his unborn child because it was in his way and it was inconvenient to him continuing to have an affair. So, but yes, I would say child molesters, personality, when you're talking dominance, deceit, no regard for rules, social norms, that kind of stuff, that kind of behavior tends to fall more with an antisocial personality disorder. But I think you would also find potentially a lot of, I don't know. To me, that's such destructive behavior. I think a lot of mental health clinicians might argue with me on that because there's, other traits that kind of tend to go along with antisocial personality disorder. But to me, like child molester, that kind of stuff is pretty significant. And really, to me, shows a lack of empathy, a lack of remorse, a lack of rules and norms and regard for others. So to me, it's a slam dunk antisocial kind of a thing. But that's the thing. The stuff isn't, it's not so black and white. It's not like either you're pregnant or you're not. It's not as clear as like medical diagnoses. A lot of it's just kind of dependent on the behavior that a person has when they go in to see a mental health clinician. And of course, if they have a criminal file. So it's a lot easier for a person to make a diagnosis if they have, you know, if they've got a rap sheet and if they've got stuff to go on, then it's a lot easier. But, you know, a lot of antisocial people, child molesters and stuff that are not caught can come across, you know, very charming, very likable, very non-predatory, very world's greatest guy or person kind of a thing. So it can be it's difficult, I would imagine, to diagnose. Yeah. Stainless says yes, there's a spectrum, and who can really say? And I think at the end of the day, that really is it. It's, you know, it's just different shades of the same color. And I think what's most important for us is to be aware that that spectrum, anywhere on that, is a problem. It's sort of like trying to figure out, okay, well, what kind of poison am I drinking? Like, it really doesn't, like, even though strychnine might, or arsenic might be the strongest, you know, if you're drinking Drano or bleach or something like that, that's still a big problem. Like, you still don't want to have any of that in your life whatsoever. You don't want to be ingesting it, right, at all. Like, it doesn't matter where on that spectrum. Tide Pod to arsenic is a problem. Do not ingest it. Yeah, Dandelion Green says, yes, I hear Larry Nassar was very charming and likable. Yeah, I'm sure that he probably was. You know, it's part of how they go about manipulating. If a person was, you know, very unlikable, very difficult, demanding, that, I mean, thank goodness for people like that in the world, because they are the snakes in the road. Like, you can see them, like, you see them, they are there. You know, I'll take people like that any day of the week, because I can get out of their way. It's the snakes in the grass that do the most harm, because to normal, decent people, they don't see them, and they justify it. They justify, because it's just not on their radar of stuff to screen for. And it's how oftentimes they can manipulate so many mental health clinicians, because I think by and large, a lot of people that get into mental health are normal, decent, good people. You know, they're in there because they want to help other people. And so even though they might be trained in this, it's, yeah, you know, you have to really be exposed to it. Either you have to, on a mass level, either you've lived with it, you grew up with it, or you're working in a clinic that deals, you know, a jail, or a clinic where you're dealing with such a high volume of like antisocial or like highly manipulative people, that it really bursts that bubble of kind of naivety. But it's difficult, you know. It just like, it is just, because and that's the thing too, is every single person is a person, so they come across differently. So you might have one person who comes across as a, you know, a Jeffrey Dahmer, or what was his name? Was it Wayne Gacy? Wayne Gacy, the clown guy. So like super creepy. You get a dark feeling just from looking at pictures of him. You know, the Charles Mansons of the world. Like, there's that. Then you've got kind of the Bill Cosbys, you've got the Larry Nassars, you've got the Scott Petersons, and I'm trying to think of some females to throw in there. I mean, Lord knows there's plenty of those too, but it's just, it's in the human brain too, is a pattern recognition machine, really, is what it is. And so even if a person's in an environment where they're dealing with manipulative people on a very regular basis, if they're dealing it's just our brain makes connections that we're not even aware of. So if they're dealing with primarily men between the ages of 35 and 45, they're probably not going to be set to scan for maybe older women or much younger women, or kind of what have you. It's just, you know, normal, decent people just don't have this kind of stuff on their radar. Even for me, I feel like I'm up to my neck in this kind of stuff every single day, and I have been for years and years and years. And even still, I am still continually shocked at the games that get run on me within the Facebook group, within just stuff I don't even think about, that I'm like, man, I gotta make a mental note of that, because I just would not have guessed that that would have happened, because it's just not something that I would think about doing, you know? There was, yeah, Shannon says you have to be charming to be able to abuse hundreds of children. Yes. Yep. I don't know if it's on YouTube or not, but I think it was mentioned in the book, The Gift of Fear. Gavin DeBecker, I think, is the author of that book. Fantastic book. And he had mentioned these kind of the level of insincerity, convincing insincerity is what it is, with people that are predatory. And I think it was the kids, yeah, the kids who shot up Columbine. God, that was a while ago, like 15, 20 years ago. One of them had been arrested or detained. I think because they were still in high school, had been detained for some sort of vandalism, and was court ordered to meet with a therapist. He gave great lip service. I am sorry. I was, basically I was a stupid kid. I didn't mean it. I'll do different next time, blah, blah, blah. He said all the right things, and here's this kid. He's what, 17? And then he gets out, and then he opens fire in a school. So the real charming ones, the insightful ones, have the ability to say whatever they need to say in order to get whatever they want to get. And it's just, again, difficult for normal, decent people to wrap their minds around that. The more overt narcissists that come across, arrogant, grandiose, brash, difficult, demanding, controlling, and they're that way all of the time. Those are the snakes on the street. And, those kinds of people tend to really lack insight. I know to be, people are going to get on me, but those are like the Donald Trumps of the world. Like, people, that kind of behavior, they are like that 100% of the time. They're like that with their family, their friends. They don't even hide it. They lack the insight to realize that that's a problem. And they can kind of put on some charm, but it's very short-lived. Like, that unhealthy ego really surfaces quickly in pretty much every single situation. And this is not about politics. This is about personality. So just know that. Okay. Let me scroll up here. Yes, I agree, Mala. Mala says it's harder to accept and identify covert narcissism. It really is. And it's just, it's just one of those things that moving slow, tuning into your intuition, and I think at the core of it, just realizing you matter and your feelings matter and that you have value, and just getting just as absolutely grounded in that as you possibly can, because it is so easy to get knocked off balance from an emotional manipulator, for sure, but also from friends and family and like well-intended other people that might want to see you happy. And and then of course, if we're doubting ourselves during all of this, if we're like, well, maybe we're not seeing this stuff clearly because we have issues, or because they remind us of our ex or what have you. But I just pay attention, just go with your gut, just trust your gut. Okay, let me scroll up here. Dandelion says, I used to say my father was on the Donald Trump spectrum until I learned about narcissism, and my father is politically not at all like Trump, personality only. Yeah, it's something else. I mean, it really is. I haven't read, I'd like to read the book, the most recent one that came out. What was it? I don't know, Fire and Fury or something like that. I think would be an interesting read. But yes, I had a family member who was definitely on that overt side of the spectrum. And it was just unlike anything, even to this day. I mean, it was Donald Trump comes close, but he was this family member of mine was really something else. I mean, it was just pathological lying, and people bought it. And he was an educated, I mean, there was no reason for him to lie. Like he had, but that's the thing. Like they're not lying because they're not comfortable with the truth. Like most people lie because they're not comfortable with the truth. Pathological liars lie from a place of insecurity. And even though their truth might be impressive, it's still not enough because it's that underdeveloped, unhealthy ego that they're trying to compensate for. It's just bizarre. It's just really, really bizarre. Okay, let's see. Yes, Musically says, how the heck do they just move right on to the next person without even taking accountability for the pain they cause? It's just horrendous. Ugh. Yes, and I think the answer to that's even more horrendous, and it's because they just don't attach. That's how. There's no depth. You know, like me saying, for normal people, we have degrees of love, right? So like, I love this cup. I love the tea in this cup. I love my brother. I love my car, you know? So there's different types of things that I love. But even though it's the same word, there's obviously it's not the same, right? So like my love for my brother is much stronger than my love for this tea, although this tea is really, really good, but it's not the same, right? For a narcissist, it's kind of all that same surface level, and people are very much things for them. So there's not that deep emotional bond there. It's like, for them, it's like, I love my brother. I love this cup. I love my tea. I love my dog. I love my child. I love my spouse. It's all the same. It's just it's very shallow, superficial emotions. And that's why they can profess their love to one person and then 2 hours, be on online dating or texting their ex or cheating or, telling their child that they love them, but then 30 minutes later doing something that's very unloving. Like it's just, everything is just words for them. It's all surface. It's not, there's no depth. Okay, let me scroll up. Oh, hello, Angie. Angie Atkinson's here. She says, hi, Dana and everyone. Just popping in to say happy Valentine's Day. Welcome, welcome. I was just telling everybody that we were chatting earlier and that we're going to be doing a live stream on Tuesday, 1:30 my time, Eastern time, and 12, what did we figure? 12:30 Central? What's that? Time zones. And that we're going to make that an ongoing thing, which will be super fun. Yes, Dina says, and they emulate depth only when they listen to a person with depth. if they have that emotional awareness, right? So like the ones that have that emotional intelligence, if they have that emotional intelligence enough to realize, hey, it would serve my manipulative purposes better to mirror the other people that I'm with. And let me just back up real quick and just say, emotionally intelligent people in general do this, but there's a difference. There's not some sort of like nefarious intent. There's, normal human beings bond through mirroring. So so if you're like, oh, that's weird. I feel like I might kind of do that or whatever. Normal people do this. It's just, we're oftentimes not aware that we're doing this, but people do it. And, but con artists do it at a much greater degree, and it's all about that intensity. There's a lot more intensity with a con artist because they have that end goal, and so time is of the essence for them because they're not looking to develop a relationship. They're looking to just schmooze the target into giving them what they want. So it's, hence the level of intensity there. But yes, an emotionally aware narcissist knows what to say and do. The unaware ones just come across like, quote unquote, like that guy or that girl at a party that is just like exhausting, you know. Okay. And Angie's popping off. Okay. Popping in, popping out. Have a great Valentine's Day, Angie. And I'm so excited. We will see you Tuesday and go from there. Have a good good rest of your Valentine's. Okay. I like that. Healthy Love says, I love my therapist. He was chatting with me about all of the dates, and we both decide if somebody is a predator. He was the one supporting me and taking it slow and checking the facts. Yes. It can be nice to be validated. It's one of those things to it. At the end of the day, here's the funny thing with a gut feeling though, is it often, gut red flags are not seen, they're felt. And so it might seem really petty or really like, oh, that's my PTSD talking, if we sense something's off. And it could just be the way that a person looks at a waitress or a waiter, or sometimes it's just really difficult to kind of put your finger on the way that they say something, just a weird look that they give you, the way that they phrase something. It's just, it can be kind of nebulous. And I have found that trying to explain that, just kind of a heads up, trying to explain that to other people might be very quick to kind of discount that and to chalk that up to, oh, that's hypervigilance, or that's, oh, you're, kind of self-sabotaging or what have you. But I will tell you, for real, go with that gut, because it's the red flags in the beginning are the reasons people break up in the end. So, but I'm glad. So, not to rain on your parade, I think it's great that you're bringing awareness to the different behaviors that you're seeing. And it sounds like you have a pretty good solid sounding board in that therapist to go back and forth with and say, this is what I'm experiencing, Okay. Let's see. Yeah, that's a good question, Jennifer. So it says, this is a little off topic, but if you've been with a therapist for years and it's always seemed more of a friendship than a therapist, how would you go about letting them go to find a new one? Well, I would say first and foremost, it's not appropriate that's a very big, inappropriately blurred boundary. A therapist is a therapist, they're not a friend. And to me, it's inappropriate, and I would say it's unethical for them to even go into friendship territory, because it's not a relationship of peers. It's a relationship where one person's being paid, right? And I get it's hard to not have kind of those connections develop, especially if you find a therapist and you're like, man, if in any other circumstances, we would probably be friends. Like, this is a really cool person. But it's a line that they really need to be walking to keep it at that professional level. Cause like I said, it gets into kind of unethical territory there. But I would say something like, I really valued our time together, and but I feel like I'm going to try some different treatment modalities, different treatment approaches. And then maybe kind of wait till the end of your session with that, with your last session, or, you don't even need to necessarily say anything, because again, it shouldn't feel like a breakup. This is a client therapist relationship. It, so, but I get it. AJ, awesome, says, I'm training to be a counselor, Dana. I want to work with domestic violence and trauma. Any advice, please? I would say get as much experience as you possibly can in the type of people that you would like to work with. So going through the stuff personally is one thing, but then actually being able to, man, there's just so much, like there's so much to it. Here, I'll tell you, one of the things that we struggle with the most in the support group, and here I'll open this up for you. If you're not already in the support group, let's connect and we can figure out maybe a way for you to get in there and kind of just observe. And, if it's something that you really, and that I will warn you, like it's a lot. That support group is a lot to emotional stuff, and it runs 24 hours a day. But if that's something that you're interested in, maybe we can talk about doing some more like admin kind of stuff behind the scenes. But so what I was saying was, one of the things that we struggle with the most, myself included, in the support groups is with having other people's stuff stay their stuff and not over identifying with it. And that can be very challenging, because, I am assuming that you've gone through this. This is why you're here. If we've gone through it, it's very easy for us to over identify and to see ourselves in that person, and to want to kind of push them into a certain direction. Like, you must leave, you need to go no contact, you need to do this, you need to do that, and kind of all of that micromanaging and controlling them, and then getting very emotionally invested in it. And so it's one of the things that we really try to work on is realizing, obviously, right, everybody's got their own path, they have their own journey, they know their situation the best, and that they're going to have to make decisions that they can live with. And that it's very important. A big part of healing from this stuff is in a person reclaiming their power and control. It does them no favors if we jump in and we're like, well, let me just take over your life, right? Like, let me just micromanage you. That's not cool on a couple of different levels, right? But the big one being is it cheats them out of the opportunity to learn how to reclaim their power and control, and to make decisions about what's healthy for them. So it can be really, when you see a person going down a really dangerous path or a destructive path, it's difficult it's a fine line to walk between being supportive and encouraging, and kind of trying to influence them in a positive direction without getting emotionally invested. And I will tell you, if you've gone through this stuff, then it's amazing. All of the emotional stuff that you think that you've dealt with within yourself, it keeps coming up, and it'll keep surfacing and surfacing and surfacing until it gets healed enough to where it's not where it's not controlling you, to where it's not this like knee-jerk reaction to, you know, in how you respond to other people. And there's been a handful of people in the support group where I have caught myself, not what, sometimes I haven't even caught myself. Like it's been after the fact where I'm like, you know what, I really handled that inappropriately. Like I need to back up. You know, can somebody else kind of monitor this thread here, because I just said some stuff I really, that was not helpful. And so like I'm I'm benching myself, you know. It's difficult. It's difficult. And I feel like a support group can really be great training for that, because you can tag team other people, you know, versus one-on-one stuff where it's you, right? Like it's you and them. So it can be a little bit difficult to kind of bite your tongue and keep your cool when there is nobody to tag off to. So, yes, totally. Stainless says emotions are like onion layers. I think it just keeps going back to cells. Even cells have a memory. You just keep uncovering the issues. Yes. Yes, absolutely. And it's amazing. Like the stuff that just keeps surfacing. And I think one of the challenges, well, I think that we all have, but again, that I have had, has been it can be so easy to get so down on yourself, to be like, you've got to be kidding me. Like I thought I dealt with this. I thought I dealt with this emotion or this issue or what have you. And yet here it is again. And that can really be frustrating and discouraging. And so one of the things that I try to do is, and it's like I said, and more often than not, it tends to be kind of after the fact of me not handling a situation like I would like to have, and then getting discouraged that I didn't handle it better. You know, it just takes practice slowing things down. But to replace that judgment of, oh, Dana, you blew it again, or I can't believe you did that, or what were you thinking? Like all of that kind of critical parent stuff in our mind, it takes practice to replace that judgment with curiosity and be like, okay, why did I handle that like that? Because it's not about them, it's about me. And what was going on? You know, why was I over identifying with this situation? How could I handle it better next time? You know, what would have been more helpful to have said, for me to have said? You know, just getting curious about it, you know, can be, because just making yourself feel bad doesn't like, that doesn't get you anywhere, right? It just makes you feel bad. Let's see here. Postmodern saying, well, hello, postmodern saying, I hate emotions. Oh, but that's because I have a mood disorder. I really wish I could be like a Vulcan. Well, so on that level, on that note, Travis and I were watching, we've been watching Star Trek, I think the newest series of that, but then my favorite is The Next Generation. Absolutely loved that series of Star Trek. I think they just did such a brilliant job of humanizing in characterizing all of the different species that they came across in the universe. And they just did a really great job. Anyways, but if you notice though, in like the old Star Trek episodes, it tends to be the Vulcans and the people that are all about logic and reason that tend to continually misread the situation. They're never the ones. They always have answers. They always have the logical and reasonable answers, but they never really come up with the appropriate solutions. It's always kind of that blend between empathy and understanding and that emotional intelligence, which is perceiving so much more of what's going on out there versus just that straight logic and reason and intelligence is how it's normally measured or understood. So just saying. Yeah, healthy love is saying, yeah, in the ministry with homeless people, sometimes I need to bench myself too, because I would say something people aren't ready to hear. And it's hard to see people being abused and show patience. Yes, it is. And it's difficult to see, when you're on the other side of this and you're out of that fog and you're seeing things clearly and you're seeing somebody who's actively being manipulated and how they just keep falling into the manipulations time and time again. And of course, it's so obvious to those who are not in it, right? Because we're not emotionally invested in it. But it's so difficult to see a person continually in this cycle. And over time, it becomes incredibly draining and crazy making, especially if we are emotionally invested in them getting out of the situation. And that was something else that I really struggled with when I was working at a domestic violence agency. It was pretty much, and this was a small town, it was pretty much the same women over and over and over and over again. And I became very discouraged very quickly when I was first started there, because I was like, what is going on? Like, what is going on here? And how do the same women keep finding it's the same guy but a different name? Like, what is going on here? And how do we live in the same small town of under 15,000 people, and how are they continuing to find like every abusive psycho in town, and then I haven't even come across them? It's bizarre when you start realizing it. But then when you start realizing that when any of us, if we have behavior that tends to run in a pattern, if we're finding ourselves attracted to the same types of people over and over again, or taking the same type of jobs, or reacting in the same type of way, there's more going on there. And so it's worth looking at, like, okay, if I am a willing participant in this situation, what's going on here? And odds are it's stuff and the reason it's so difficult to see is because this stuff is subconscious. It's these patterns that are computer programs, like in our brain, that we're continuing to run that we're not aware of. So, and it's difficult to see them. It's difficult to break them. And it's just so many factors there. And it really can be, it can really wear you out seeing people that you care about continue to stay with an abusive person or a manipulative or exploitative person, or for them to finally get away and then have that victory be very short-lived, because then they get tangled up with somebody just like them. But breaking patterns for any of us, it takes practice. And every single time around that mountain, hopefully we'll pick up some new awareness and some new skills and a new approach, and then do things differently. It's very uncommon that a person only gets involved with one abusive or manipulative person. Because if they're missing something, if the program that their brain has been running, if there's certain key components that they're just not picking up on. Like for me, for example, right? So like with my pattern was I fell for love bombing every single time, with friendships, with business arrangements, with dating partners, all of it. And it was because I wasn't perceiving it as problematic. I was perceiving it as healthy and ideal. And then I was always very confused and surprised and upset when things, went really far south. I just didn't understand why things went so bad and where, like what happened, why they went so far off track and what I could have done different. But once I realized, oh my God, love bombing is not healthy, and that I was glossing over my instincts, then that's when, and that I was falling for love bombing because I had been so starved out. I think feeling so unloved and unimportant for so long. That's why I kept falling for it. Once I realized that, I was like, okay, I need to bench myself and really figure some of this stuff out because I want to break the pattern. And, you know, that pull was still very much there. It still is when I come across it. It's still that knee-jerk reaction for me to want to just dive in. And I still have to try to catch myself and just slow things down. There's not that urgency. It'll still be there tomorrow. It's okay. But it takes practice, Doug, thank you for the live stream donation. And he says, love and light to all. Thank you, Dana, for the healing that you give. Inappropriate comment ahead, but Canada versus USA women's Olympic hockey game tonight. Go Canada. Awesome. I love hockey. So yeah, I'll root for Canada. Go Canada. I hope all is well. Well, thank you so much, Doug. And I hope that you have a nice Valentine's Day, and just know, you matter and you have value and you are worthy. And I wish you light and love too. Okay, let me scroll down. And, actually, I think I saw another, how do I see this? Another live stream donation earlier. But I was blabbing away. How do I see that? There was one. Can somebody message? Can you send a message through so I can acknowledge you and thank you? Because now I don't know how to find it again. Yeah, Stainless says, breaking patterns is so tough, that darn amygdala. Yes. Yes, it is. When people are talking about like kind of good and bad therapists, and Dandelion was saying, yeah, a bad therapist thinks they know better and that what we learn ourselves isn't valid. I will agree with that completely. And a lot of it's just in the way that this information is presented. And there's an ocean of difference between the way that this information is processed and understood in support groups on YouTube and all that stuff versus how it is clinically. Totally different. And yes, of course, I think any profession, right? If somebody goes in there, if I were to start telling my architect, my father, who's a retired architect, if I were to start telling him all about, oh, well, it needs to be, this it should really be, 2x6 construction. And, let's talk about, I don't know, load bearing walls and, R factor for insulation and all of this. And really went in there knowing my stuff, he would probably get very defensive, and I don't know how open he would be. I would probably be labeled a difficult client, so it's this, I think it's the same thing in any field, but I think especially with this one, and in what's interesting is that the internet is such a game changer. It just connects people in so many ways. And so and again, it's like any disorder, whether it's lupus or narcissistic abuse or diabetes or veganism or, I don't even, anything. There's all these communities on the internet of people that are going through whatever it is that know far more than a lot of mental health or doctors or health providers in general do, because they've researched it, they've tried it, they've done all that. And sure, some of it's bro science, right? Some of it's just um, kind of fringe stuff, but there is a lot of it that really is valid. And it's incredibly infuriating when and here's an example. So I first went vegetarian when I was about 13. So this was, is that right? 27 years ago. So this is before there were really a lot of vegetarians out there. And I grew up in Houston. So like, being in Texas and being a vegetarian, I was the only person that I knew that was a vegetarian. And I don't even know if I knew that there was a name for it. And so it was really frowned upon. And I came across doctor after doctor that did not approve. And even still, then I went vegan probably 20 years ago. And I was at a health food store, and I had a nutritionist there tell me that my protein level was really low, and that I needed to start eating eggs again. And I fought her on that, but I thought, well, she must know better. And so I began doing that. And of course, knowing what I know today, I'm like, no, that's ridiculous. Like, there's many other ways to get protein. Like, that woman did not know what she was talking about. But that kind of stuff, that level of arrogance, and like, only like certain facts about, because that's what they were taught, right? About certain things. Like, if they're really not familiar with veganism, like, they're not going to promote it. If they're not familiar with being vegetarian, like, they're going to spout out off the same stuff time and time again. Like, oh, you got to worry about your B vitamins and your protein and this, that, and the other. And it's just like, you do enough research and you live your life and you just kind of roll your eyes, because it's like, you're just saying words. Like, you really don't even know what you're talking about. And what's sad is you're talking people out of these alternative, lifestyles, because you don't know about them. And then of course, then they're like, oh, well, no, you're arrogant. And it's just like, like, seriously, you think you've had one nutrition class in college, and that you somehow, it just makes me so angry. And even when I was in nursing school with like nutrition, I know we're kind of getting off topic, but even like with nutrition there, I was going to these clinicals, and I'm like, well, no wonder people don't get better. Like, you're eating, I wouldn't feed this food to my dog, which makes it sound like my dog, like I would feed garbage to my dog. Like, I wouldn't feed food like that to anybody that I cared about. It's like prepackaged Jello and, artificial juices, and just it's just garbage. And it's like, well, yeah, you feed a plant a bunch of garbage, guess what? It doesn't grow properly. Like, it's the same with people. And interestingly enough, kind of a sidetrack, the hospital, Detroit, was it Detroit Metro, maybe? The main hospital there, they now have primarily like organic food. They have a whole greenhouse there. Like, they're totally kind of cutting edge as far as hospital stuff goes. But there's still like those ongoing battles between different industries with all of that. So I don't know. River Song says, thank you for the live stream donation. Says, thank you, Dana. Good idea for the weekend. Shock therapy. Buy a bucket of roses and give them one by one to random people on the street. Oh, I like that. Yes. Yeah. And, Vera says, I'm tired of all these diets, paleo, low carb, high carb. Just do whatever works for you individually, but don't force it on other people. Different people's food needs are different. Yeah. And everybody really does have different ways of eating works better for different people. I know, like, I'm a vegetarian now, but I would like to go, I think, back to vegan. I felt amazing when I was eating vegan. And I just recently kind of came across the whole high carb vegan thing. And I think that might, I don't know how I would either gain a bunch of weight on that, or my body would really like it. I'm not sure which. And I'm kind of almost scared to try, but Erica says, are you still vegan, vegetarian? I'm still vegetarian. Yeah. I'm just a weird, like a picky vegetarian though. I don't eat a lot of, I eat cheese. I don't drink milk. Um, I don't know, just picky. I would like to get back to that place. Okay. Now we got way off track. Elboz says, Dana, I grew up in Houston too, and you are right. Tough town 10 plus years ago to eat vegetarian. And yeah, my parents really did not know what to do with me. It was my father and my brother's favorite restaurant when I was a kid was Red Lobster, which was also my least favorite restaurant because I was never a seafood person. And uh, I remember one day we were there and they picked a lobster out of the tank, and the guy, came and got the lobster, and it was just something clicked with me, and I just became horrified by that. And I just thought, okay, I'm done. I'm done. So and then we had a Whole Foods open up, and I was probably about 13 or 14, 15 maybe at about that time. And that was really cool. They had that was super. I mean, Whole Foods back then was like the hippie place to go. I mean, they had like tempeh and quinoa and stuff that was not, especially for Houston, like not mainstream. And that became my new favorite place. So I would beg my parents to go if we could go eat at Whole Foods. Elva says, yes, one Whole Foods for all of Houston. Yep. So, okay, let me scroll up here. Okay, top quality. Says Dana, any top tips to saying no politely, please? Sure. Well, I think one of the biggest things is to slow it down. So much of this stuff, like with changing patterns, is to give yourself space to slow things down and to kind of to be able to think it through. So to say no, you could say something like, can I get back to you on that? Or, I'm going to have to check my schedule. Or, you know, I'm sorry, I just can't commit to doing that right now. Or, I've got plans, things like that. So, I encourage people to practice being, it's difficult. It's difficult to be honest, and it's difficult to learn to say no because it can feel so mean. But trying to get into that alignment and be in your truth as much as possible, and to try to catch yourself, because it's very, a lot of people, very common to make up excuses that are not true. Like, oh, I'm sick. Like, I can't do that. Or, oh, yeah, I've got to work that weekend, and like, you really don't. So I would avoid doing that stuff and practice just saying, I can't, I'm sorry. Or, um, I've got plans that weekend. Even if your plans are watching TV or doing something with your kids, that still qualifies as having plans. Uh, so however you want to frame it. And it's okay. It's okay to say, like you don't have to just say no, right? Like, you can say no in whatever way is most comfortable for you. So, good question. Oh, that's awesome. Trappa says, I have been following this live stream for a few years. I've been working through my codependency and other BS. The clarity I feel now is so amazing. I never thought I'd ever feel this way a few years ago. Oh, that seriously makes my day, makes my week, maybe even my month. Like, that's awesome. That's so awesome. And it's the cool thing. I think the biggest thing about that, with getting that clarity, is once you become rooted within yourself and you kind of are able to rediscover your own North Star, and you're able to think, like when you're aware of like what's a problem for you, and how does a problem feel, and what steps can you take for to get yourself into alignment for that problem to not be there, right? Or at least to not be kind of the center of your life, like it's to make it to where it's tolerable. Like when you can start getting back into that alignment and you get grounded in that, you're grounded in yourself, and you really are able to learn to turn inward. And you're like, you know what? I trust myself. I trust my judgment. I can be in a room full of other people that totally disagree with my approach on things, and I can smile and I can walk away and I don't even care. Like I know what's right for me. That's such a powerful place to be. And that's my hope and my goal with all of this, is for you guys to find your own alignment. And there's going to be things that I say that you're not going to agree with, and that's totally okay. It's good. It's good that people are learning to think about, how do I feel about this, and kind of where is my North Star and where is my alignment. So that's really cool. Okay. Dana Trappa says, Dana, you and the other YouTube coaches brainwashed me back. That's awesome. That's awesome. So one of the concepts in the book that I just finished reading, the Who's Pulling Your Strings, is one of the concepts she mentioned, which I love, is the difference between manipulation and influence. And I'm really glad that she brought this up, because I've had this conversation with people before and I was not able to articulate it as well as she did. And because, the argument could be made, well, we all manipulate. Everybody manipulates, right? That kind of all or none thinking is a real slippery slope to apathy and kind of this nihilistic approach to understanding problematic behavior. Like that concerns me. It's like, well, but we all do this, so I guess it's all okay, right? And the difference is, as a former teacher, as a former nurse, it was all about influence, right? So I had outcomes that I wanted for my students and for my patients. And when I was an advocate for the women that I worked with, but there was no hidden agenda. There was no like nefarious, intentions going on. It was good intentions done in a very open, honest, sincere way of, like, let's explore this. Like, you need to think for yourself, but let me just kind of, let's bounce some stuff off of each other. It was very much about them being responsible for their own behavior at the end of the day. And, so I think especially a lot of people on YouTube, like, cause, I've worked with a lot of them. So, I feel like a lot of them really do have good intentions. And I think I think that's the benefit of YouTube, honestly. YouTube or podcasts or radio is that there is that openness that comes with the platform. And the, so there's kind of that beauty in that. Everything is very open. I mean, I'm on what I'm saying right now is this is stuff that my, people are going to hear in like 100 years, because it's on the internet. It's there forever. So you've got to, I kind of like that, because it takes away that veil of, one-on-one kind of stuff, so yes, we might try to influence a person and maybe kind of help point the way to be like, okay, this is how you know when you're on track. This is how you know when you found your center. And two, I think that's the benefit of having multiple speakers on this topic. And every single one of us comes at this topic with a different approach. And so that's another reason I encourage people to listen to a wide variety of people on this topic. And some of us, I might not resonate with some people, and other speakers might not resonate. And it just, you just kind of need to find your fit and get a variety of input from a variety of people, and kind of helps put everything together. Yes, Malta was talking about saying no and says, yes, as a recovering codependent who struggled with saying no, my practice phrase is I'm not interested, or sometimes thank you, however, I'm not interested. I like that. I like that. So kind of what I was saying before, as I was saying it, I didn't like what I was saying, but I didn't know how to rephrase it. I was saying something like, oh, I'm sorry, but I can't. I would like to get away from apologizing for saying no. So I like your phrase. It's much more empowered of the, thank you, but I can't make it. Thank you, but I'm not interested. Thank you, I have other plans. I like that much better, instead of saying, I'm sorry, but I have other plans. So subtle difference, but I think a significant difference. And the Fed, good question, asks, hold on a second here. Man, this tea is so good. And the Fed says, hey, Dana, off topic question, but do codependents love bomb as well? Yes, I think they often do. And it's the same kind of stuff. So it's the the intention, I think the intent is different. So with narcissists, with sociopaths, they love bomb with the intent to like use, abuse, exploit, or neglect another person. Kind of all roads lead to Rome. Like all roads lead to their ego. It's all about them all of the time. Codependents may love bomb, but it's more of like ingratiation, false flattery. I think more so ingratiation. It's very, ingratiating kind of behavior, kind of their way of trying to, quote unquote, control their environment. So, if a person's skill set is such that they only know how to get their needs met by being nice, if they're not comfortable getting their needs met by being assertive, and if they're not comfortable with being aggressive, then that only leaves being passive. And so a lot of that love bombing just tends to be like, okay, overly nice behavior, which can tend to come across as like martyring them, overgiving. Like they're offering too much, they're doing too much, they're martyring themselves. And because they don't know what else to do, it's kind of the only tool that they have in their toolkit is, I only know how to be nice. So in order to get you to like me, in order for you to stay in my life, I'm just going to keep being nice. And the more anxious I am about you leaving, the nicer I'm going to become, which that's when we're talking about like kind of that ingratiating type behavior, that placating, people pleasing, walking on eggshells, twisting yourself into an emotional pretzel kind of behavior. So kind of point being, both love bomb, the motivations behind it are very different, and but it's all still a problem. Heather asks, Dana, are you drinking that licorice spice tea? I am. It's the Egyptian licorice tea, although I don't remember if it's the mint kind or not. It's it doesn't say here. Oh, this is interesting. So the yogi tea has these little sayings on the tea bags. And this one, which is so appropriate, says, in life, don't create just an impression, create trust. I like that. That's very appropriate to what we're talking about. Yes. And the Fed says, yes, I was a martyr. I never thought of manipulating my ex. I wanted to marry her and take care of her. I became a doormat very soon. Yes. And Truth Seeker says, yes, good or bad. I started with white lies, then anger, and am now being more healthfully assertive. It's been a process. I am with you guys 100%. That was very much me as well. It was, I was definitely, I did not like conflict. I did not like anger. I did not like tension in general. And any tense situation, I felt the need to get rid of that tension as soon as possible, even if it was not due to me. Like I could walk into work, and if there was tension between coworkers, it was unbearable for me. And so then I would try to do all these things to get rid of it. And oftentimes that meant being overly nice and just kind of walking on more eggshells and trying to just continually resolve issues that were not mine to resolve. And then same with that martyring, like overgiving. And but I didn't realize it at the time, but it was overgiving with expectation, because that was the only tool I had in my toolkit of I'll be nice, and then I'll earn your love, earn your friendship, earn your loyalty, earn whatever. And then if that's not delivered, or if it's I guess if I don't earn it, then I'm going to start growing resentful. And then that resentment would build up because I like, I didn't know how to be assertive. It was just I don't know. It's just such a learning process with so much of this. I felt like I had reasonable boundaries in a lot of ways. I don't know. It's just a learning process. Because I was going to say, I felt like I had healthy boundaries, but I think in a lot of ways I really didn't, you know? And one of the things still for me now is because I don't like conflict. It scares me because most of my significant relationship, like with men, have been very low conflict. And so I can always tell, like, if I get upset, then that's a big red flag. If I'm getting upset with another person, I don't normally have that with people in my life. It's just kind of my personality tends to be very low conflict. So that's a big sign of I need to really take some steps back and examine what's going on with that. But what concerns me is with dating people is because there's oftentimes not a lot of conflict there. It concerns me because it's been my past where one or both of us has had a lot of built up resentment because we're not having uncomfortable conversations. So I also tend to date men that don't like conflict either. And the two narcissists, or actually more like sociopaths in my life, those were also very low conflict relationships, but it was crazy. Like they were living double lives and it was full of dominance and deceit and all of that, but it was all below the surface, but I've had a few, one short-lived kind of high conflict relationship. And thank God I saw that kind of stuff for what it was and got out of that. But I had another high conflict. Well, I don't even know if I'd say that was high conflict. The last one that was high conflict was like actively high conflict, like provoking, trying to bait me into a fight. It was just exhausting and ridiculous. The one that I had in high school, that I wouldn't say was high conflict. He was just dangerous, and he was just psycho. Like, he just didn't care. But he didn't try to bait me into fights or anything. He just wouldn't give any clarity for anything, and had this huge sense of entitlement, and he was just dangerous. I mean, he was already in and out, I don't know. He lied about everything and had been in and out of jail a couple times. Yes. New Chris says, but Dana, surely that just says that you're freeze or fawn and not and not more of a fight. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm I am a freeze fawn, I guess flight. Angie and I were talking about that a little bit yesterday, and I was saying, my main defense is sleeping. When I get stressed out, I'm out. I mean, I can, if there was an Olympic event for sleeping, I think I could take gold. I think I could do it. Like, I'm just really good. It's amazing how much energy stress takes from me. And I've always been that way. So I think my mom is that way. My dad is not. My dad has the energy of like a little kid. It's ridiculous. And he's, I don't even know, 76. So, but my mom, I don't know, my mom and I both have always been a big into napping, sleeping in, like just tired all the time. So yeah, I'm just not a big, I need to get better with handling that. I've been trying to understand my different behavior as I have awareness of it, right? Because that's the big part of it, is it's so difficult to see stuff when it's you, because you're so close to it. But so certain things, there's so many things lately that I've been trying to bring awareness to slow things down. So one of my ongoing ones is food. And I've noticed, well, since I started my YouTube channel, I've probably put on, I don't even know, 20 pounds, at least 25. And it was so weird because I didn't realize I was gaining weight. And I didn't know why I was gaining weight. I was freaked out. I'm like, I've got a tumor. Like, maybe there's something really wrong with me. Maybe it's my thyroid. I didn't feel like I was eating any differently. And I really began kind of bringing awareness to my food situation. I'm like, okay, I know, I'm eating more than I need to be, that I normally do. And then I realized that it tends to be a stressful situation, and then I'll immediately go to the fridge and want something that's high fat, like ice cream or sugar or fat. I crave it. And it's been interesting because, okay, so one of the other things, I'm kind of trying to watch myself with is anxiety. So I have a tremendous amount of anxiety doing these live streams every single week. It's been this way since day one. And I would like for that to not really be as significant of a thing as it is in my life. And so I had this realization a few weeks ago. I'm like, I think it's this room. Like, I have associated this room. I get anxious when I walk in the door because before I was never in here unless I was doing my live streams. And so I've moved. I now work here. So I write. This is where I write. This is where I'm on Facebook. This is like where I do my day-to-day stuff, is at this very spot. And I've noticed that my anxiety has significantly decreased because now this room is just a room that I work in, and there's not I don't know. It's just interesting. It's interesting to try to slow stuff down and kind of figure out like, what can I change and what can I do different? And is this working? Is this not working? And to just kind of play around with environment. So one of the things, the side effect to this, trying to get rid of this anxiety or decrease this anxiety with being up here, has been, I noticed that I've been eating less because before I was working downstairs at the kitchen table. So I was only 10 steps away from the fridge. Now I'm upstairs. And so I'm not near the fridge. And so that kind of being on autopilot to go eat isn't so much there. So I guess the point of all of this is like paying attention to your different fight, flight, freeze, fawn. I think forage is another response that we all have. All of these different responses that we have and how we cope with stress in general. It's just very interesting. Healthy Love says thank you for live stream donation, says for the Valentine's Day, can we just talk a little bit about yes, thank you. I love that. About our progress, any emotion or behavior that is a victory over CPTSD or a little overcoming of sadness and pain, and anything great you did for yourself lately. Let's do. I love that idea. So yes, if anybody could share their progress, any emotion or behavior that's a victory over their CPTSD or a little overcoming over sadness and pain, anything great you did for yourself lately. Share away. I'm going to think about your question too while other people are hopefully answering. Well, I will say, so today I gave myself a pedicure, which always makes me smile. And let's see, what else? I don't know. I had a pretty chill day today overall, I guess. Progress. So I would say for me, in the past year, self-care in general has really become synonymous with self-love. And it's something that I've been much more focused on doing on a more regular basis. Whereas old me was very much with the mindset of like self-care was like a luxury or a treat. And so I didn't make it a priority in my life. It was only kind of whenever I had, extra money or extra time or both, that I would go do something for myself. And so now it's been making more of a conscious effort of, I've got time. Like, it's okay for me to actually make a nourishing meal for myself or to spend that extra money. I mean, I talked about that before, like to spend the extra money and get some high quality ingredients and make myself a nice meal, or to take time to just paint my toenails or things like that. And just, taking care of myself. And part of that self-care has been really paying attention to my emotional environment and kind of weeding the garden, I guess, my emotional garden of different people in my life, and kind of making sure that it's healthy and good. So, okay, let me scroll up and see what other people are saying here. Good. Oh, Tanitria. Hello. Tanitria says, today I went to the psychiatrist and treated myself to breakfast and took my time to relax. That's awesome. Good deal. And oh, that's awesome. Vera says, my self-love moment today was taking a break to sing and dance to a few of my favorite songs. Oh, that's a good one. Dandelion says, identified a PTSD moment, a really bad one, and naming it felt empowering. And it's a good start, I think. I think so too. That's huge. It's awareness is always the first step with anything. And once we have a name for things, then it starts to become more manageable, because then we're not swinging at ghosts. We know what we're dealing with. El Boss says, I bought a new skincare line of products and I love it. That's exciting. Oh, yeah. Colleen says, I put several notes to myself that say, use your pain for a purpose. It's a good reminder to keep looking for the positive. Yeah, I love that. That's absolutely. Sable says, my old smartphone is acting up. Damn it. Yeah, mine was too. I actually went to the iPhone store before I did my live stream. This last update really messed up my phone. I had to go wipe everything and start over again. Oh, that's fun. Stainless says, I bought my son slippers and made chocolate brownies. Oh, I love it. Carmelita is saying that she journals almost daily. Good for you. Mora says, I'm healthfully loving me, buying myself a much needed new mattress for Valentine's Day. That's a huge one on so many different levels. I remember, so one of oh, there's so many like little moments. When I first moved, I don't remember, I don't even know, where was I? I think I had just gotten married and I was talking to my old neighbor. I don't even remember the details around this, but something to do with sheets. I think I just got married. And my neighbor had said something like she can't handle sheets that are under like an 800 thread count. I had never thought about it. I just had always like, right? Like everything else in my life. Well, like, whatever was cheapest, whatever somebody gave me, whatever was on sale, it was never about what I liked or what I wanted. It was just kind of always enough, And I felt, I don't know, it felt like I was being picky or entitled, or it just felt icky. Back then it felt icky having preferences. Like I should just be grateful. I should be grateful for the sheets I have. I shouldn't want, is basically, that was my mindset at the time. And I remember her saying, she's like, there's very few things. She's like, there's very few things that I spend money on, but good sheets is one of them. You're going to be in bed a lot, so you might as well have sheets that are comfortable. And I remember thinking, like, I've never really noticed the difference. It's just weird how like you don't even notice the difference between stuff when it's not on your radar. And which is really weird, especially when it comes to sheets, because I don't see how I could have not noticed that. Because I feel like kind of the princess and the pea now, because when I'm with sheets that are, 200 thread count, it's like I'm being exfoliated. Like they're not comfortable at all. But it just was not on my radar at the time. And so I thought to myself, like, that was my big, yes, it was. I had just gotten married because I had sold my house and I had a good chunk of money. And I thought, I'm going to go splurge and I'm going to get a good set of sheets. And so I bought a set of sheets that was, I don't remember, 800 or so thread count. And I'm like, man, I'm never going back. Like, these are amazing, amazing. How did I ever sleep on those, just ridiculous, like really super cheap sheets. And I'm not, please don't think that I'm, um, I don't know. There's certain things I think it's okay to prioritize your money on. I realize that this is like a first world issue, and don't get me wrong. Of course, I'm absolutely grateful to have sheets at all and to have a bed at all. But it is nice to kind of realize what you like and what you don't like and all of that. So. Okay. And Jennifer says, do introverts and extroverts cope with abuse differently? I'm an introvert, and when I come home from work, I'm a hermit since I work with the public. That's a really great question. I would imagine that they do. Although when a person, I think no matter how introvert or extroverted they are, isolation is a big part of recovering from abuse. And I mean, you can see that with animals. No matter how extroverted the animal is, if they've been hurt, they're gonna hide. They're gonna want to be alone, and they're just gonna want to be alone. So I think people are oftentimes very much the same way, but for a person that's already introverted, and if they've been around people, it's extra, I think, extra common for them to want to just really be alone, um, to kind of just detox and recharge. I know for me, I can only be around other people for so long. Like I enjoy other people, but there's a limit, and I really do like my alone time. And that's something that I have to watch. I've always been okay with being alone. To me, I've found a lot of comfort in kind of my solitude over the years, ever since I was a kid. So it's never been a thing that I've struggled with. But my challenge comes from I can get really comfortable with being alone. And then, kind of, next thing I know, I wake up and then I am lonely because, it's like then you want a friend and you're like, oh, wait a minute, where did everybody go? Because it's easy for all of my hobbies are very like solitary. So I enjoy writing, I enjoy reading, I enjoy uh, making jewelry. I enjoy aerial yoga, which is with other people, but you don't interact with them. It's yeah, I get it. Oh, good. Erica says, good night. I love you all. Take care and remember that you matter. Thank you, Dana, for giving of your time tonight and made my Valentine's Day healthy and worthwhile. Awesome. Good night, Erica. Hopefully, we'll see you next week. I like that. Missouri Cowboy says, okay, morning affirmation. Be kind and gentle to myself, which includes good, comfortable bed and shoes. That's another good one, is the shoes, comfortable shoes. Like, yeah, you just start realizing, like, this is your life. Like, these things matter, right? It's a good investment. And here's the thing too, is when it's not, so like on your emotional scale, right? Of 5, 0 being these are absolutely awful, 5 being lukewarm, 10 being this is it, right? This is totally amazing. Of if we're finding things, shoes, sheets, food, partners, friends, jobs that are not in that 9 or a 10, maybe even with 8 to 10, we'll say that range, 8 to 10. If it's below that, then it can be satisfying in the short term, but it's not for the long term. And then what tends to happen is we tend to continue to replace them because it's not exactly what we're looking for. So, with shoes, it might be like, okay, I really wanted a pair of, I don't know, black boots. And I guess these are good enough, but they're really not that comfortable. And I really don't like how they look, but they kind of fit what I'm looking, they kind of fit the bill. But then they wear out fast. They're not comfortable. Then our back hurts, then our feet hurt. And, it's like we would have been better off just taking the extra time, spending the extra money, and getting a pair of like just quality. It's quality. It's what it boils down to. It's quality. It's quality, and it's knowing yourself well enough to know what what matters to you, and not settling, not talking yourself out of it. So many things like that. Excuse me. Oh, that's interesting. Postmodern says, yeah, I'm having to explain to my manager that I can't be dealing with customers all the time. It's not good for my mental health. Today I was like, am I in the right line of work? Yeah, I will tell you, it's very interesting. And I know that you've read up on this too, but kind of learning about empaths and and then I think just getting more in tune with yourself and your own emotional scale and kind of how things feel. And when you start bringing to your awareness of how things feel when things are uncomfortable, then there's this ripple effect, right? Like you start seeing it in other areas of your life. And then it's so weird because you're like, how did I not notice that before? Like with me with sheets, how did I not notice that these are uncomfortable to like no end? Like, how did I even sleep like this? Really wild. Or same with fabric. Like I'm super sensitive to fabric now. And again, I'm like, how was I ever not this way? That's so strange to me. And same with being around lots of people. And um, it's interesting when you have these different levels of awareness about yourself. And then it's kind of that added thing of what you were saying of like, well, now what does this mean? And especially if it's something significant like your job. I didn't realize for me how much time I really needed to recharge. And I had, this is something I've talked about, a handful of times before, but like with all this stuff, with my Facebook group, with my emails, with my book club, with the live streams, with all of this, is I didn't know what was wrong with me. I was like, why am I so tired all the time? And why am I gaining weight? And what's going on? And this is what I want to do with my life. And I thought I was lazy for seriously like a solid year and a half. I'm like, I must just be lazy. And so I was reading all these books on like time management and motivation and productivity. And I took a YouTube class and I was doing all of these things thinking that I needed some more skills or or accountability or discipline. That was the big one. I'm like, I just need more discipline. And frankly, some of this might just be true, but what it really boiled down to was I did not realize that, it's kind of that whole kind of caregiver fatigue. I was not aware of how I felt when that started setting in. And so I was confusing because it's a lot of the same emotions of just avoidance, overwhelm, exhaustion. That's how I was experiencing it. But because that can kind of mask itself as laziness, it was really flying under my radar. And so I didn't, it didn't register. So when I realized, I don't even know like how it came to be, but I finally realized, I'm like, I feel like I need to maybe take Thursdays off if I'm doing a 3-hour live stream on Wednesday, or at least switch gears and not. And so I did. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be in my Facebook group on Thursdays. I'm going to take that day off and I'm going to use Thursdays to do laundry and clean and really switch gears and do something different. And it's made an ocean of difference. So it's so interesting when you start kind of seeing these things within yourself in a different light. And instead of being at war with your experience, instead of having all of that resistance to it and that judgment, to really bring that level of curiosity to things and just be like, why, what are some reasons I might be experiencing this? And instead of just pushing through, be like, how can I rearrange my life in such a way that it's not such a chore, that I'm not feeling like I'm having to walk through quicksand. Like, how can I arrange things to where it's enjoyable? Because it should be, right? It's like our life. So interesting. I think that's great advice. Postmodern says, yeah, my therapist told me to not to tell my manager about my mood disorder, but to talk about it in terms of strengths and weaknesses. Yes, I think absolutely. Absolutely. I really think that's a fantastic suggestion. And I think too, is a lot of people might also feel that exact same way. It's just that they've never been able to slow things down or examine that within themselves to the point where like they just have never thought about their own life that way, of like what's working for me, what's not working for me, like what can be adjusted, those kinds of things. So yeah, I'll be curious to see what you come up with. Yeah, and postmodern was saying, yeah, which I started today. I was on the register for 2 hours. I was all dressed up and I was like, I'm done. Yeah. Ara says, I never had those words, caregiver fatigue. That's exactly what I had after my father died. But it was combined with the CPTSD from being seriously abused by family during that time. Yes. And then it's an level of exhaustion that is almost inhuman. Like, yeah, where you just don't acknowledge, because and especially when you're caring for somebody else and you're struggling with PTSD anyhow, because it feels like with PTSD, oftentimes it feels like you're constantly treading water just to function. And so that in itself is pure exhaustion over time. But then the added challenge of, it's like trying to tread water with somebody on your back, like trying to take care of somebody else. And it just gets to be too much. But then if it's somebody that we care about and we're trying to, help them too, then there's just this feeling, the sense of, I can't stop doing this. I have to do this. And so, yeah, that exhaustion just really compounds upon itself. And then oftentimes we're really relying on caffeine and other things to keep us going, which tends to make things worse. And it's a lot. It's a lot. But yes, caregiver fatigue is a very real thing. And it's something that, social workers, therapists, nurses, uh, people in caregiving type professions develop. And then it really leads to burnout because you just get so tired. So I think the point of that is paying attention to how different things really kind of manifest within your life. And, how does compassion fatigue, caregiver fatigue manifest? What are some symptoms? What are some symptoms? How does depression tend to manifest if you struggle with that? How does anxiety? Everybody experiences this stuff differently. So paying attention to, okay, what are some common signs and symptoms for me? Because again, we're so emotionally invested in it because it's us and we're so close to it. It's very difficult for us to see when something is becoming a problem. I like that. Sable says, my motto with that is ALAP, as little as possible. Yeah, I think that's a good thing to do, is to take as much off your plate as you possibly can, and to treat yourself with as much compassion as you possibly can during those times. Oh, that would be fun. Stainless. I don't. There's all these different side conversations going on. Stainless says, "Yes, there's a saloon here that teaches line dancing. I should work up the courage to go." I love it. That sounds like a blast. Okay, let me scroll up here. Jennifer says, I'd love to have a cat to help with anxiety, but is it selfish to use an animal in that way? I think it'd be different if you were talking about getting a dog, because dogs are a much more time intensive thing. They need to be walked, and they need a lot more. Cats are very independent creatures, and they kind of come around when they want to come around. So to me, I think that can be a really great kind of symbiotic relationship that can form there with the cat, and there, tons of rescue cats looking for a good home. So that's a really great way to, and I think it's a good reason to actually get a pet. It's I guess what I'm more concerned about is, if a person is stable enough that they can provide a stable home for an animal, and that the animal is a good fit to their lifestyle is a bigger thing. A lot of people are like, oh, I really want, I don't know, a golden lab because we had that when I was a kid, but then they're never home and they can't walk it, and the dog is just, super high energy and is bored and depressed all day because so it's finding the right pet for your lifestyle, I guess is what I'm saying, is important, very important. Oh, Karen says, Dana, when will your 5-year journal be available? I'm excited. Hopefully soon. It's with the formatter now. Her name is Amy. And Amy and I have been working on this book for this book. This book has been, every single book is so different and has its own set of challenges that come along with it. And this book has been no exception to that. So it's hopefully close to being completely formatted. Last I heard, she was all the way through April, which is good. And then the next step is going to be with getting it printed. So I was really going back and forth for a while. And I think what I'm going to do is, I feel like I'm going to have to get it printed in China because the printing that I want done is, I want it to have a ribbon placeholder, and I want it to have a certain type of binding that lays relatively flat when you open it. And I cannot for the life of me find any printer in the United States that does that. Really frustrating. So so we'll see. Like I said, I found a printer in China. So then it's going to be, as soon as I get the book back from Amy, then I will send it to this gal in China. And then I have to bulk order it, which is going to be a whole nother learning curve. And I think here's what I'm thinking of doing, because I really don't want to send a box of like 1,000 journals to Amazon sight unseen. That just makes me really nervous. I'm thinking with this first order, depending on how many people actually want this book, because right now I think it's just me and you. I don't know who else. Like, I'm excited about it. I hope other people are as well. But if not, then all of my friends and family are getting 5-year journals for every single holiday for like the next 50 years until I go through all 1,000 of them. But kids are going to be getting them for Halloween instead of candy. I don't know. But so I'm thinking what I might do is just get this box to my house and then mail them out from here, is what I'm thinking. That way I just know, like, I can see them and I can know, So we'll see. But hopefully soon. I know that it's also Chinese New Year on, I think, February 16th. And from what I've heard, China pretty much shuts down for about at least a solid week due to Chinese New Year. So. Karen says you could package it with one of your favorite number 10 pens. Oh, that's hilarious. I totally could. I was thinking about doing something kind of extra special, since if I'm going to be shipping, that first batch myself, it would just, because it's probably, I mean, like, realistically, it's probably going to go to people here, right? Like on the live stream or in my support group, people that I know, quote unquote know, that I see every single week. So I was thinking it would be kind of fun to do something special, like, I don't know, make some Well, I guess I don't need bookmarks because I'm doing the ribbon thing. But yeah, like a little something like that would be fun. I'll have to think about that. Think what else we could do. Oh, let's see here. Let me scroll up. Marcy says, yes, cats are wonderful. They are so funny with their quirks. Yes, they are. It's amazing how much personality can live in such a fluffy little body. Karen says you could do pre-orders. So, okay, I was thinking about that, but I don't know how to do that. So, because if I don't think I would be like fulfilling them through Amazon. I think I can only do a pre-order through Amazon if it's fulfilled by Amazon. Like if I'm fulfilling it, I don't think I can. So I guess I could call Amazon and find out for sure. But the thing with this printing company is that they will send me a like an author copy. So I'll send them like the PDF version of the book with the cover and all of that, and then they'll mail me, like one copy of the book. And then I have to, as like a proof, an author proof, and then I have to approve it, and then they print off, whatever, however many I order at a time. But I just, I just am nervous. Like, what if they give me the author proof and then they do kind of like a weird bait and switch, and the books that I actually get printed are not the same that they sent me through the author proof. And then I'd have no way of knowing. And then, you know what I mean? So, because I've heard horror stories, so it's not just me being paranoid. So I was kind of thinking, at least with that first batch, I would just kind of know it. I would be able to do kind of quality assurance and just make sure that they do look the same as the proof. And then after that batch, I could see about having them, and I'd have to figure that out, even like how to have them shipped directly to Amazon in such a large, I'm sure people do it all the time, right? Like that they send thousands of books to Amazon at a time. But it's just a bunch of stuff to figure out. It never ends. Shannon says, what's a number 10 pen? Well, Shannon, they're actually number 7 pens. There are these fantastic Pilot pens that I love. This was one of my mini things where I'm like, you know what? I know this sounds like ridiculous, right? Like these are such a luxury. They used to be such a luxury for me because they're not super expensive. They're not, I don't even know. They're like probably $2 a pen, but it's like, it just makes writing so enjoyable. Like I just really, really enjoy writing with these pens. Like they're inky, but they're not too inky. And I have all of the, I have so many colors of these pens. Like this is my luxury. It makes me feel like, I don't even, it's just a very good feeling. Like I really enjoy having these in multiple colors. So. Okay. New Chris says, I'm using a black one right now. Yes. To me, they're money well spent. I just love them. Oh, that's a good question, Missouri. Missouri Cowboy says, Dana, sometime would you discuss the 3 types of people that Henry Cloud describes, the wise, the fool, and the evil, and how each react when confronted with truth? Would you discuss this on some live stream or video? I for sure can. Let me think if I have an answer for you now. Um, I think it depends on what kind of truth is being presented and how it's being presented. So I think a wise person, I think a wise person tends to kind of squeeze as much as they possibly can out of something. A wise person can see the truth in truth, even if that truth is painful. So kind of no lesson is lost on them, I guess. They really try to just squeeze everything out of every situation that they possibly can. When confronted with truth, if the truth is, again, something that's uncomfortable, the fool is going to continue to deny it. And um and I think I think that's the thing, is like, we could, at any given time, any of us has these certain traits within ourselves, right? uh the evil, but we're talking about like degree and frequency of these traits. So a person who is just evil, who's sadistic, who's malicious, who's intentionally destructive or dangerous or deadly, you know when confronted with the truth, more often than not, they try to deflect it, they try to deny it, they try to um, but then to themselves, they justify it. So because a person, any of us, our beliefs always have to match our behavior, and if they don't, then we're acting in a way that doesn't make sense to us. And our brain is not wired to do that. The only time people act in a way that is outside of, so like, your thoughts always equal your actions, right? Your beliefs always equal your behaviors. The only time a person is acting out of that level of resonance is when they're psychotic. So either they're psychotic due to, drugs or a brain injury or, mental illness, or something's going on that's outside of their normal, like, cognitive functioning. So, um, so outside of that, kind of the cognitive impairment, a person's beliefs always have to line up with their behaviors. And in order for that to happen, we all do it. We all continually justify our behavior. We find a belief that fits whatever behavior that we're going to take, no matter what that is. If I'm trying to lose weight, and if I really want to have ice cream, I'm going to have to justify that behavior, that action of eating ice cream, because it doesn't fit with my thought. If my thought is I want to lose weight, but my action is I want to eat a high calorie meal, I'm going to have to make myself okay with that, or I'm acting in a way that's going to cause me a lot of mental distress. So to ease that, I might justify it and tell myself, well, okay, then I guess I'm not going to eat dinner. Or, well, I'll just eat a smaller portion of ice cream. Or, well, I won't have chocolate syrup on it. Or, well, it's low calorie ice cream, it's okay. Or, well, I'll go work out at the gym twice as long tomorrow. Like, you're gonna, like, and your brain's gonna keep offering up justification. This happens like, seconds. It's a very quick process. And as soon as our brain latches on to a new thought, that it's like, okay, that one makes sense, I'm comfortable with that, then boom, we've justified it. It works with losing weight, and it works with, evil, malicious, destructive behavior. It's the same process that's going on in our brain, no matter what the behavior is. So that's why when you're dealing with a person um, who has a lot of like evil behavior, and they're lacking empathy and they're lacking remorse, it's because they've justified it to themselves. Just like, for example, you know, if I were to go back in time, would I or not even back in time. Like if I were to see like Larry Nassar on the street, because that's actually, 5 minutes from here. What if I were to have seen him on the street, knowing what he did, would I have felt bad for, um, hurting him? Probably not. Like I think I could justify that pretty easily in my mind. So it's people, any of us can justify. It's whether or not we should justify it, I think, is the issue, right? So like with the whole Larry Nassar thing, like, and that's the problem with vigilante justice, is then it just becomes chaos when stuff like that happens. But anyways, the point being of, yeah, it's the reason, dangerous, destructive, deadly people do things is because they're able to continually justify it to themselves, and everything revolves around their ego. It's all about them, and at the expense of other people. So they don't really have a higher moral code that dictates their behavior. It's all kind of what they want in the moment, which is fleeting. And that's why they're so unpredictable and erratic, because, it's trying to hit a moving target. I hope that somewhat answered your question. That's a really fantastic question, though. Jennifer, that's a great question. Also says, would it be weird to bring up sexual dysfunction or abnormalities with your therapist? Should I seek a specific sex therapist for this? I would say ask your therapist. Exactly. I would say it exactly how you did. I would just say, hey, you know what? Is this weird? Like, is this weird if I want to talk about this? Are you comfortable with this? Would you rather I talk to a specific sex therapist, and see what they say? Because my guess would be that every therapist is going to be different about that. Um, Postmodern people are talking about stress, things that cause stress. Postmodern thing. I always thought bipolar was biological, but it's also caused by stress. It's interesting. A lot of mental illness, whether schizophrenia, bipolar, I mean, you name it, all different types of things. Stress plays a huge part in it. And it can cause, psychotic breaks in people. It can cause an exacerbation of symptoms. Um, Most of the time when people have that first kind of, manic episode or even schizophrenic episode, it tends to be because there's some major stress going on in their life. And it's the brain, that whole mental health field, it's so new still. It's exciting. We live in exciting times. It'll be interesting to see where everything goes within our lifetime, because yes, there's uh, a lot lifestyle, learning different coping mechanisms. We've talked about that whole dialectical behavioral therapy, the DBT, and how fantastic it is, and how I really wish that there would be some way that they could teach that starting at a young age. Kindergarten would be fantastic. Coping skills, understanding your emotions and processing your emotions, and getting in tune with yourself. All of that stuff is just so important. And um, it's skill sets that I think anybody could benefit from, you know. But yes, there's oftentimes a huge kind of um, life stressors that tend to go along with mental illness. The brain is a complex, fascinating organ. Okay, let's see here. Let me scroll up. I'm scrolling up. Okay, let's see. Gosh, this chat is full of lots of good insight. And questions and interesting conversation. Okay, Postmodern says, Dana, we would like to know your opinion on how not to get targeted as a scapegoat anymore, if you have an answer. Well, are we talking scapegoat like within family or within work? Or I guess maybe it doesn't even matter. I think it goes back to what do we have control over? And the answer is ourselves. We don't have control over what other people do or say. All we have control over is how we respond to it. And so if we are being scapegoated, blamed for things, then that's really where boundaries and being assertive come into play. So having those conversations, shedding light on as much of that kind of a situation as possible. So if somebody at work is, blaming you for a bunch of stuff and whatnot, to really kind of, bring in, either have the conversation with them directly, bring your boss into things, have open, honest, sincere discussions to the point that you think it's helpful. If a person is, actively just, if you're dealing with like a pathological personality at work, then I would just try to document as much as you possibly can through email or voicemail, stuff like that. With family, I would also try assertive communication. Postmodern says, yes, in a group of people, like if we were the scapegoat in our family of origin, and now we find ourselves as a scapegoat in our adult groups, then there's a couple things. I would start looking at, okay, then there's stuff that's repeating, right? And we tend to repeat things that are unresolved. Sort of like the saying, it's not old issues that keep coming up, it's unresolved issues. And that has to do with conversations. It has to do with people that tend to play the same type of roles in our life, that we also, when we find ourselves continuing to play the same type of roles in our life, what's going on here. And odds are there's a lot of that subconscious programming at work. But a great way to break out of that, so there's something that's called the drama triangle. And I think this is a really kind of it's a very reductionist way to look at things, but it's also can be very helpful way to look at things. And it's basically, there's only three roles that a person can play if they're in the drama triangle. You're either the victim, you're the persecutor or victimizer, or you're the rescuer. There's not a lot of room. It's just kind of one of those three positions. And oftentimes people will kind of slide around that triangle and they'll take on different roles. So in one dynamic, they might be the victim. The next time around, they might be the victimizer. You see that with like abuse and then reactive abuse kind of a thing. Then, it's just the way out of that drama triangle is through healthy boundaries, through healthy standards, through having deal breakers, and through being assertive. And I think through being as open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication with others where it's appropriate. I mean, if you're around a bunch of emotional manipulators, that's not going to get you very far, right? But to at least have that open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication with ourselves, that's huge. It kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, replacing that judgment with curiosity. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And how could I do something differently? And what's going on here? Journaling can really be fantastic for this because it does kind of get a person thinking. I was talking to a gal about this in the support group today because she was struggling with kind of going through different feelings and this all this stuff can be so confusing, right? Because like there's oftentimes a lot of manipulation that's involved. There's a lot of self-doubt that's involved. There's a lot of denial and justification and PTSD and confusion and hypervigilance and like all kinds of stuff to try to sort through, right? And to be like, am I perceiving the situation clearly? And one of the things that we were talking about was to get a piece of paper and to put a line down the middle of it. Or if you're doing a Word document, to make two columns. And on one side, write down the event in as much kind of neutral terms. Like if you were a fly on the wall, like what would you have seen? And then write down on the other side of the piece of paper how you felt about it. And so then you can start examining if you do start slipping into kind of your perceptions of things, or am I really running a pattern, or what's really going on here, then you can go back and kind of see, okay, here was the situation, and then here's how I felt at the time, and here's what I did at the time. And then you can kind of see, okay, was this appropriate or not? So I don't know, that's just maybe it's just kind of a different way of journaling about it. It's kind of what I'm saying. Um, let's see. Bonnie says journaling is a great idea, but what in the thick of it? But when in the thick of it and we are just so exhausted, what can we do? So if a person's at that place of just absolutely feeling frazzled, I would say first thing is to back up and get peace in their life. And so it helps to if you're learning to get in tune with yourself, and it all takes practice, right? But if you're practicing getting in tune with yourself, if you're aware, you're like, man, okay, on an emotional scale of where am I, and if I'm at this extreme, and if we also look at our emotions, instead of viewing your emotions as bad or good, viewing them as they all have a message for you. That's what they're designed for. They all have a message for you. It's delivered in a way that's either pleasant or unpleasant. Kind of the universe leads by the carrot or the stick, if you've heard that saying before. Very true. Our emotions lead us by the carrot or they lead us by the stick. They're either pleasant or they're painful. If emotions are really on that painful side of the spectrum where you're like, okay, I'm exhausted, I'm frazzled, I'm fried, I'm irritated, I'm angry, I'm full of rage, I'm done, I'm just burned out, then those are some real clear signs of, okay, I need to start working towards finding that middle ground, because really nothing else can be done until you can at least get yourself to a place of kind of emotional neutrality. So I would make that a top priority, is really getting some peace into your life, even if it's for 10 minutes at a time. Turning on a guided meditation. There's, tons of them on YouTube. Going, taking a nap in the middle of the day, going for a walk, decompressing somehow, some way, starting to do that multiple times a day, getting more peace into your life so you can start thinking more clearly, because it's really difficult for a person to think clearly and to take clear action when they're under so much pressure like that. So I would say, get that pressure off as and back into alignment as and make that a top priority. So cutting out caffeine can also be a huge step in the right direction when a person's feeling so at wit's end. distancing yourself. If it's like a certain person in your life, or like, man, it's my sister, she just is such a witch, and I can, it's the holidays, and she wants me to watch her kids, and she's constantly calling me names, and she's doing this, and she's stirring the pot and telling our parents all the stuff that's not true, and this, that, and the other. Part of getting peace and back into your life is going to be really limiting contact with her and distancing yourself to where, she's not, you're not feeling completely drained by all of her actions. And, we've talked about boundaries and being assertive and stuff like that. And that stuff takes practice. And I would encourage you guys to just work towards finding that peace in your life. You're going to get better with boundaries and being assertive over time. And that's kind of, that's an ongoing process, because it's learning a new skill, right? So I would encourage you to get peace in your life, kind of, you know, even if you're telling, if it means that you're not answering your phone, or even if you're not handling things in a way that that you hear us talking about, where we're talking about being assertive and saying no and saying, oh, thank you, but I can't. Even if your approach is to call in sick, or to, um, you know, whatever, like, you kind of, by whatever means necessary, getting peace back into your life, you can refine the approach as you can get yourself to a place where you can think more clearly and with more practice. Malta, thank you for the live stream donation, and says, are roles in dysfunctional families assigned based on age or in a way that we respond to our caregivers? Thank you for your weekly sessions. I think it's a little bit of both. So there's something to be said for sure with like birth order in families, with, the oldest child, the oldest child tends to be more assertive, more take charge. They're also the ones that were raised the strictest more often than not, right? Because parents are new parents. And then the middle child tends to kind of be the forgotten child. And then the youngest tends to be the baby, kind of a thing. And so sometimes it can be the oldest child is the favorite and the baby is the baby. And then, again, the middle child is kind of tends to get lost in the shuffle. But not always. So every family is a little different. So maybe the role of golden child might be the middle child, because maybe the firstborn child was, I don't know. Let's say there's a narcissistic mother, okay, and the firstborn child is a boy, and the secondborn child is a girl, and she names it after her. And then the youngest child is maybe even also a girl, but maybe it's a girl that looks like the dad. And so the narcissistic mother really over identifies with that middle child, and then puts all of like her unfulfilled hopes and dreams and all of that on that middle child. And so, every family is different. Sometimes birth order, does play a part. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, or I mean, it probably always does, but maybe it's not the primary driver of different roles. But and two, I wouldn't say that it's so much necessarily how we respond to our caregivers as much as it is how our caregivers respond to us. So it's it's the parent's job to be the parent and to establish the bonds, right? And to provide validation and to provide that kind of sense of safety and security and self-esteem and all of that. So it's more the child is developing and seeing them. A big part of our development as children is we're seeing ourselves through that validation of our parents. And that getting that validation or not getting that validation can really have some, huge impacts on a child's self-image and self-esteem and everything. So that's a really great question. I'm trying to think of a book with, if anybody can think of a book about family roles and that kind of stuff that could expand on that question, please let me know, either in the chat or down below. Trying to think. The book, the Codependency for Dummies, talks a little bit about different roles and kind of the results of that. I'm trying to think of, there's got to be another book that I've come across. I'll have to think about that. Bonnie says, what happens when your mother is a narcissist, is 88 years old, crippled, and demands and needs your help? What then? Well, I think you do what you feel comfortable doing. So, one of the great examples in that book, Codependency for Dummies, that she gave was a very similar example. So you have two different women, Jane and Jill. Both of their mothers, let's say, are dying of cancer. Okay. And both women decide that they want to quit their jobs and take care of their mothers. Jane decides, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to quit my job, and I know this is going to be a lot for me to take on. And let's even say that their dynamic with their mother is very strained. Okay. Even though that wasn't the example she gave in the book, but let's just make that into the example. She's like, you know what? I want to be able to do this. Okay. But she's like, let me do it in a way that's not gonna erode my sanity in the process. So Jane is gonna get, a caregiver to help out a few days a week, somebody to help with, meal preparation. She's going to make sure that she takes time for herself to go for a walk in the evening. She's going to give, but she's not going to give to the point where it's killing her. So finding that balance. Whereas the example in the book, the other gal, so that's what Jane did. That's how she handled it. She kind of, did an honest searching inventory of herself and was like, how much can I comfortably give? How can I outsource some of this maybe to other people, to people at my mother's church, or to her mother's friends that may be in the picture? Can you call insurance and see if they can provide a caregiver a few hours a week? What resources do I have available to me? Let me utilize those so I'm not sinking myself to save my mother. Okay. Whereas the other gal, so in the example, Jill, quit her job and then decided, okay, my mother needs me, and I'm going to give and give and give and give and give. I'm going to be on call 24 hours a day. I'm going to cook all of the meals. Whatever my mother wants or needs, I will be there. This is this is what I need to do as her daughter. And then she gives and gives and gives, builds up resentment, wears herself out, becomes physically exhausted, becomes probably physically ill over time, caring for her mother way past what she can comfortably do. And in that book, the author Darlene Lancer talks about, and I love this distinction, talks about the distinction between caregiving and caretaking. And caregiving is when we can give care to another person, and that comes from a place of abundance of, I've got the energy, I've got the time, I've got the desire, I've got the the additional resources. Like, I can comfortably give care to this other person because I'm filling my bucket so I can fill their bucket. Okay. Caretaking is coming from a place of really fear, obligation, guilt, or scarcity of like, I have to do this. I need to do this. I can't comfortably do this. I've got to just take care of them. It's all on me. It's my responsibility. And so then that comes from that. The result of that is that resentment. It's physical illness. It's exhaustion. It's, a person wearing themselves out. So it's okay to have boundaries, even if a person's 88 years old, even if they're your mother, even if they're crippled and demands and needs your help. It's okay to just, to have boundaries and be like, this is what I can comfortably do. And this is what I can't. And if your mother is narcissistic and manipulative, whatever you do is not going to be enough anyhow. So even though she's 88, like if the fantasy is still there of maybe I feel obligated to do this, I need to do this, she's my mother, maybe she'll finally see the light. She's 88 years old. Maybe now I can somehow earn her love or her approval. I guess if I were you, I'd kind of just make sure where your action's coming from, and to not to make sure that you're not holding on to some sort of fantasy about what that could result in. Yeah, Bonnie says, yeah. She says, interesting. Yep, caregiving and caretaking. Yes, and I think so many of us, we have been caretaking for so long, and we never knew it. We never knew what healthy boundaries were. It was just, we were so used to living our life kind of coasting on fumes because we were so exhausted all the time because it was always about everybody else. And it felt selfish and uncomfortable ever putting ourselves, not even first, but trying to make ourselves just equal, like to make our wants and needs matter. Oftentimes feels really selfish and greedy, and like, there's a lot of guilt, inappropriate levels of guilt around that. So, oh, okay, good. Bricks and Feathers mentions the book Drama of the Gifted Child. I don't think I ever finished that book, but I would like to. Let's see here. Let me. Okay, lots of stuff going on in the chat, and okay, and that is my timer just went off. So we're going to go ahead and do our wind down for tonight. Kind of get grounded, take some time to get comfortable, get relaxed. And then we'll call it a night. So yes, the fantastic suggestion, you guys, about Alice Miller and her work. Yes, she was definitely one of the four psychologists at the forefront of this whole movement. This was back in the, was it 60s? If maybe even earlier than that. I'd have to look. It was early. When they really it would have been interesting. It would be interesting to see somebody do a movie on that, kind of how they really began kind of piecing things together. And I would be interested to hear too of all of the resistance that they must have encountered. Because of course, any new theory comes with resistance, right? So I would imagine, especially in psychology, if I had a dozen more lifetimes, that would be something I would really be interested in taking on. I think it would just be fascinating. But I hope somebody does. I hope somebody takes that on. And then let me know. Let me know if you do, because I will totally buy your book if you research that. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so yes, let's get comfortable. Oh gosh, my back. Take some time, get comfortable, settle in if you're in a chair Or, oh gosh, or if you're lying down, realize that this is your time for you. Taking in some deep breaths, deep oxygen-rich breaths. And turning your attention inward. Bringing your attention to your heartbeat. Continuing your deep breaths. Allowing yourself to relax. And bringing your attention now to the top of your head. Slowly scanning your head for any tension that you might be holding on to. Your eyes, your cheeks, your mouth, your jaw. That's a big one for most people. Allowing your face to relax. Perhaps letting your jaw fall open. Letting the tongue fall from the roof of your mouth. Relaxing your neck, your shoulders. Letting your shoulders drop down. Maybe even if you're laying down, letting your shoulders fall open. Feeling the weight in your arms. Relaxing your hands. Relaxing your chest, your stomach, your hips, your lower back. And letting your legs fall into any position that's comfortable for you. Relaxing your thighs, your knees, your calves. Letting your legs, again, fall in whatever position is comfortable. Feeling the weight of your body as all of the tension starts to release from it. Noticing now that you are completely relaxed. Noticing with each breath as you breathe in, it's so much easier than it was before. There's not the resistance that there was before, that it's effortless. And with each breath, breathing in that amazing healing oxygen and just letting it travel as far down your arms and your legs as it possibly can go. And now, as you breathe in, imagine breathing in a healing, peaceful, restorative white light. And as you breathe out, breathing out any tension that you might be holding on to. And perhaps as you exhale, imagine that tension as some sort of shade of gray, like fog or smog or what have you. And imagine, visualize yourself blowing that smog as far away from your body as you possibly can. So breathing in that purifying, peaceful, restorative white light. And breathing out any remaining tension, pain, anxiety. Breathing in that restorative, healing white light. Letting it go down your arms and your legs, deep into your body. And exhaling any tension, pain, or stress. Breathing in that restorative white light. And exhaling any remaining tension, pain, or stress. This is an exercise that you can do as well on your own. Keep doing the breaths until all you have that you're inhaling or exhaling is white light. So this might take you, depending on the day, 7 breaths, might take you 27 breaths. It can be a really great way to kind of tell where you are as far as stress or tension or pain. You might also, as a variation to this, as you're breathing in, imagine sending that healing, oxygenating, restorative breath to those areas of tension or pain. So sending in that breath to those areas, using that breath to help loosen up those areas, and then exhaling the tension and the pain with each exhale. Also noticing with each breath that it becomes less and less gray. So maybe the first few breaths were a dark, ashy gray. And as you've moved forward in this, they become a lighter and lighter gray. And to the point of ideally when you're inhaling white light and you're exhaling white light. So it's completely moving through you. It's effortless. You're releasing all of the stuff that your body's ready to release at this time. And so now, having filled up your body with that light and love, let's take a few moments and send that light and love out into the world, out to others, to possibly people in the chat tonight, to any friends or family around the world that you care about, anybody else, whoever they might be, that you want to send some healing energy to. Now is the time. When you're ready, come on back. Giving some of that light and love back to yourself, reminding yourself that you matter, that you have value, that there is so much that is right about you, and that you are healing in big and small ways every single day, in so many ways that you're probably not even aware of, and that you're just doing such a good job. You really, really are. That you're learning how to get in tune with yourself. You've come so far. You know what feels good. You know what feels bad. You know how to keep yourself safe. You know how to move yourself to a place of safety. You know how something feels when it feels off. You know how confusion feels, and you know how clarity feels. And you're doing this. You're doing a great job. You're getting your bearings. And so taking some time to just celebrate how far you've come. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes and rejoin the group. So, thank you guys so much for joining me. And I hope you have a fantastic week. And I will see you guys. I'll see you Tuesday if you're going to be a part of that live stream that Angie and I are going to do. It'll be my channel here on YouTube, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it'll run for about an hour. And if you can't make it to that one, actually, we're going to do 3 live streams next week. So then they just realized this. So then we'll do the Wednesday live stream. And then we're going to have a book club on Thursday. So welcome. Yes, Malta says, wow, I just realized that my jaw was sore. A lot of people hold tension in their jaw, and you may find that you're grinding your teeth at night, or that you're clenching your jaw while you sleep. And so that's a great exercise to kind of do throughout the day, is to practice just letting your jaw kind of hang open and releasing your tongue from the top of the roof of your mouth. It's amazing. And then just kind of doing this, just really just allowing your jaw to just relax. So, and Jennifer says, I'm sorry for so many questions. You are so fine. This is what this time is here for. And the cool thing is you get to hear, there's like 120 something people on the chat. And so you get to hear a wide variety of feedback from people that have been there, done that. So, and then I try to chime in when I can. It's the cool thing about the live streams is it's the community of all of it. So, okay. So you guys have a fantastic Valentine's Day. You are loved. You matter so very much. And this is a really fantastic day for us to also honor ourselves, and for loving ourselves and making yourself a priority in your own life, because we need to do that because it's important, because you matter. So with that said, thank you guys so much. I will see you next week. Lots of love. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care. I'll talk to you soon. Okay. Good night.